right. All right. I'd like to welcome everybody to OVN's podcast. It's called Dealing with the Invisible Injury. And we're going to talk about in this series some specific things of how veterans and military deal with issues they have when they transition out of the military, combat stress, transitional stress, PTSD, traumatic brain injury. There's so many different things that veterans deal with when they get out of the military and in the military that stem from that combat deployment, just military service in general. So the way we're going to do that is we're bringing special guests on every month, and we're going to let them talk about how they use certain things or therapies, whatever you want to call them. It doesn't need a medical term, but things that help us mentally and physically. And I caught up with two of my friends here. I got to know Connor Matthews for a couple months now. He's up in Boston, and Sean Lally is with us too. So Army Ranger and an Air Force Combat Controller. These guys are veterans, and we're going to talk to them today about not only their career, their life, what they're doing now, but we want to hear how Jiu-Jitsu's played a significant role in their life. And the important thing is, hey, all you veterans, military families out there, take a listen to these guys and see the value in this type of help. And really, I've done some research. There's Jiu-Jitsu studios all over the United States. I've connected with a couple organizations, so it's something we can get access to easy. So without me talking anymore, I want to get these guys to introduce themselves, talk a little bit about their military career, just to give us a highlight. And then we'll talk about what they're doing today. So go ahead, Sean, lead us off here. Tell us a little bit about what you did in the military, in the Army.
Hey guys, what's going on? My name's Sean Lally. Happy to be on the show. Glad to be here, sharing my experiences. I joined the military when I was 18 years old. It was something that my father was a Marine. I had a lot of military guys in my family. So it's something I wanted to do since I was a young kid. And about 17 years old, started filling out college applications and things like that. But I knew I really wanted to go to the military. So I met up with a recruiter, went that route. I joined the Army. I stayed home this summer, basically took off to boot camp after that. I went to Fort Benning, Georgia. I did my boot camp down there, infantry, AIT. After that, I went to airborne school, jumped out of some planes, learned some new skills there. From there, I went to the Ranger Assessment and Selection Program. It's an 8-week program, basically to get guys from airborne school into Ranger Battalion. After that, I graduated, I want to say May 2010. And about 3 months later, after graduating that, I was in Afghanistan on the ground. I turned 19 years old. They sent us right out. I was with one of the most elite units on the ground, 19 years old in Afghanistan. We had a fairly intense deployment. And that was a very big experience in my life. And I did 3 years in the military, and then I've been out since 2012.
2012. All right.
That's 2012. Yeah.
What made you choose the Army?
They had a good signing bonus. There wasn't much thought behind it. I wanted to be an infantryman. At first, I wanted to go Marines just because my father was. And then I started watching YouTube videos and stuff. I was like, it looks pretty cool to be an Army Ranger, and that kind of is the reason I decided. Met with an Army recruiter and went for it. There wasn't a lot of decision. I met a recruiter and I signed up the next day.
Yeah, I'm going to flash a picture up here of, we'll see if we can get it up here, of one of Sean's unit. I'm always interested to hear why people, why they picked the branch and that type of thing. And, I was on my way into the Marines. I didn't know anybody. I had no family that was military. I just needed a job and I needed to get out of town. And the guy says, hey, take his pre-AVEP test. He was at our high school. I took it. And he's like, oh, yeah, you're good to go. And actually, my dad was in the hospital with a guy that retired from the Army. Told my dad, and my dad says, hey, this guy wants to talk to you. So I go in there, and he said, what the hell are you doing? I said, I'm joining the Marines. He's like, no, join the Air Force, man. Go talk to a recruiter. So for short, I went over there, and I'm like, you got me. So I enlisted in high school. So that's cool. I tell you, Ranger, hell of an accomplishment, man. You know, that's something to be proud of. At Tab is, I got a lot of buddies that are, and people, that's something to be proud of right there. So, hey, just in general in your service to your country. So thank you for that. So here's some, John, a little more familiar with these guys. We'll switch over to Connor, and Connor, tell us a little bit about your time in.
So, so my whole life in high school and stuff. So I go from there. We graduated high school, and I was mostly a hockey player. I was really competitive into hockey. I've done martial arts my entire life, but ended up getting an injury my senior year during my hockey season, and it put me off. So my original goal is to kind of do that progression of playing competitive hockey, trying to play college hockey or prep school hockey, and I got an injury. I kind of stopped. They kind of put a stop to all that, and I started getting into MMA gyms. So for like 2 years after I graduated high school, I was just training and fighting because I guess I fell in love with the sport. After I had my first MMA fight in 2011, I really fell in love with the sport. And I was doing that for 2 years. My father started to kind of get on my back about going somewhere because, it's not, if you guys, the MMA game, until you really make it big. And I mean, I talk about the top level of the MMA, like in the MMA game, you're not making too much money. It's really, you got to do it because you love it, not really because, it's really profitable. So, I mean, so my father was like, you got to make decisions what you're going to do. And that's when I went in to go talk to a recruiter. And originally I was going to go for Navy SEAL because I don't know if you guys remember that movie Act of Valor. It came out. They basically got Procky. But it was good.
Yeah, I remember it. Okay.
It was a good movie. It was like Call of Duty basically in the movie form. But I remember that came out. I thought it was really cool. And so I went to go talk to a Navy recruiter about joining the SEALs, and he just wasn't really giving me any SEAL jobs. He's like, oh, you can do this job. And, he was just trying to get me out of there. You know what I mean? And I was like, no. So I walked across the hall, talked to a Navy recruiter, and they really sold me on the CCT PJ career field. They told me all the stuff they do, all the training. You're definitely getting Halo. You're definitely getting dive. Yeah. I mean, they told me all that part. They didn't tell me how hard it was going to be, but they told me all the schools you're going to get. So
got the pipeline.
Yeah, got me in there. So I ended up making requirements, getting sent to the pipeline. I went down to San Antonio, Texas, did my basic training, which for Air Force, it wasn't that hard. It's pretty, but it's crazy for us though. Once we got into our selection, our actual for soft stuff, it gets pretty challenging. My pipeline was 2.5 years. Like I said, I hit tactics, I hit Halo school, dive school, did a lot of cool stuff, air traffic control. It was really, I learned a lot about myself. I learned how to academically it was challenging for me as well. So I grew as a person. I was turned 20 in basic training. So from when I was 20 to 21, 22, I really grew as a person. Just because of all the challenges I was presented with during that time. Finally got my duty station up at Joint Boy Soldiers McCord. I was there for about a year. I just missed the deployment when I got there, which was kind of unfortunate. So I had to stay to wait around for them to come back, retrain up, and I ended up hopping on the next deployment to Afghanistan. So I did a tour to Afghanistan, and just like Sean, man, I learned a lot while I was over there about myself. Different stresses in life and, just a different perspective about life, I think, when I was over there. And when I came back, I was almost near the end of my contract. I hit 5 years by the time I came back from my deployment. And that's when I decided to focus back onto mixed martial arts and get back into that. And I'll tell you about, my stories about using jiu-jitsu to deal with. That's kind of actually, when I dove back into martial arts, I was kind of just using it to deal with, I wasn't sleeping right. I was a little bit stressed out. I was getting, short tempered. I was getting mad at people and stuff. So I just started going, and like I did my entire life, whenever I ran into problems, just like back when I was saying, when I got an injury and I got hurt, I started going back into martial arts. So the same thing I did is I started, not feeling happy. So I got myself back into martial arts, and that blossomed into what's going on right now, where I just kind of going all in and trying to fight professionally and see where I can take it. So I'd love to talk more about that. And that's my story real quick. And from now on, I've been training, fighting professional MMA 3-0 at the time. So see how it goes.
Cool. Yeah, I tell you, so for both of you, one of the cool things is I know a lot more about CCT. And like I said, I got some friends that were Rangers, but both jobs, both career fields for people that are watching this that weren't in the military, or if you're in the military and maybe you're in the Navy, maybe you're in the Marines, you haven't heard of these two career fields. I'm sure you heard of them. They're pretty elite. So, the CCTs, there's probably a couple thousand of them on active duty at any given time. It's a pretty cool career field. And like I said, I got a little bit more experience around that. I've been down to the schoolhouse at Pope. I had some buddies. I was, a special vehicle mechanic.
Yep.
But I used to help work on the equipment. So the old rat vehicles, what they used to be called, years ago and all that stuff. So I got to know a lot of guys who were in those, special tactics units. And that's how I kind of got tied together. In fact, my partner, he's not on tonight, Shad Bab. He's actually in Thailand. He just got out of quarantine, but he travels around and basically trains our friends, our allies, mostly special ops units on using mini drones. And so he did that. So he's out now since he retired, and he's gone all the time. So pretty cool gig. But he must be gone. It's like being on active duty, deployed all the time, but of course he sent me a video where they quarantined him, and it was like a 6-room suite, and he wasn't suffering at all. So
living the life.
Yeah. So
in quarantine anyway. I got to work with some PJs overseas, Connor. I was actually working with those guys for a while. We were on QRF together for like a good 4 weeks in Jalalabad. So they're cool guys, and they taught us a lot.
Yeah.
They had a lot of cool tricks and different things to show us, training exercises and stuff. So
yeah, and there's a lot of joint operations, especially when you get into the more elite units. There's a lot of joint operations. I don't know. Did you know Dylan Elchin, Connor?
Yeah, actually, she went through training with Dylan. He was
Really?
He ended up graduating one team above me because I watched back. We started off on the same dive school team. I ended up watching back at dive school because I failed this test called one man. It's a pretty hard test, and so I ended up failing that, and his team moved on. But me and Dylan, we knew each other pretty well.
Yeah.
So yeah, fortunate. But just like you were saying, like when you get overseas, it's crazy. How joint everything is. I worked with Rangers, I worked with SF, I worked with every branch. We had recon guys, the snipers. We had it's just once you get overseas, it's one fight, and it's kind of cool to see that.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was the same experience for me, depending on what part of the country. We were working with Green Berets, we were working with Delta guys, we were working with SEALs, we were hand in hand with PJs. If they were either pulling QRF for us or we were pulling QRF for them, and the other one was taking the main mission, but we were always working with other elite groups for sure. And making fun of each other. It's competitive too.
And us Air Force guys always get the shit end of the
You guys got it bad.
Good food, living large,
I'll take getting made fun of when I have my nice warm sleep and some good food, and these guys.
I'm glad I didn't become a Marine. Those guys got it bad.
That's rough. But that is important. People don't realize that how much we think we join branches like it's different departments, and it really, it's when the mission goes off, we all got a piece of it. It's literally different branches. And that's cool. Also, I had this hat on here, but I wear this a lot. This kid he was an infantry guy. He was gunner on top of a Humvee, and Jason McClary was actually with Dylan, and he got killed. He died a couple days later after in the hospital. He had a stroke just from the injuries. And this kid was, I know his family. I know Dylan's family. He was 24, had 2 Purple Hearts. He had a Purple Heart from Iraq, and then he got a Purple Heart again in Afghanistan. And, when he deployed to Afghanistan, when we lost him, his little boy was like 3 months old, and it was just like, I think back to those guys' stories. What was really interesting with them is they grew up about 30 miles apart, didn't know each other. One went in the Army, one went in the Air Force. And like 4 years later, they end up in Afghanistan together in a Humvee, like, wow, look at this. And then, a couple special ops guys are with them. It's tough, so the families we see, there's a lot of challenges there too. So, Dylan is, I met his brothers, his uncles, he's got an uncle that's just a total nut, Demetrius, but we do a lot with Gold Star families as well. That's something I'll talk about later, but our Fallen Heroes project. But we do a lot of stuff with that. So I want to spin back over and let's talk a little bit about what you're doing now. So, you got out, what'd you say, Sean, 2012?
Yeah, I got out in 2012.
So let's fast forward to now. So what are you doing now?
So now I just opened a gym in December. So
Oh, nice.
pretty much I had a rough transition personally. I don't know if we want to go back now or just kind of go over what I'm doing now.
Go with it. Let's talk about it.
All right. Yeah. So, I mean, when I got out, I was like, I was partying a lot, I was drinking a lot and it always starts out fun, right? But between there being some alcoholic and drug issues in my family and then the things that I experienced overseas and not knowing how to deal with that emotionally, I didn't have any other answers, right? So my thing was drinking and when I got out, that led me down kind of a bad path. The drinking turned into drugs and then it all became a mix. And there was points where I was doing all right, where I was still successful in certain areas and I was making things happen. But a similarity that Connor and I have, I actually fought before I joined the military too. I had my first 3 fights when I was in high school. I had 2 when I was 17 and 1 when I was 18. And the whole time I was in the military, it was like, I couldn't wait to get back to MMA. Yeah. And I didn't fight for 6 years, 3 years I was in the military. And then kind of 3 years after I was kind of messing around, it wasn't, I'd take responsibility for my shit, but I put myself in a bad position. I wasn't able to train as much as I wanted to. But when I was at my lowest points, that was one thing that I always knew I had accessible and available to me because I had already done it and I knew how much I loved it. And I knew that I had to be in shape and healthy in order to be able to do it the way I wanted to do it. So even when I was really, really down and out, I had that hope of, all right, let me get back in the gym. I'm gonna get back in the gym. I'm gonna train, I'm gonna get surrounded by all those people that I want to be surrounded by. Yeah. And thank God for MMA and Jiu-Jitsu. I mean, I tell people, and I don't say it lightly, like I would be in jail or be dead. Like that is the honest truth if I didn't have MMA or Jiu-Jitsu. I have a lot more tools now, but that was the one thing that really kept me coming back for a while. So there was years where I used MMA to get healthy, but it was just this up and down roller coaster. I'd build myself up to heights and then I would just find myself, surrounded by, alcohol and drugs again at the bottom of the barrel, lose everything. There's a point I lost my license, lost my house, this and that, and I checked into the VA. I mean, and that was something that was really, really difficult for me to do. Right. I'm a Ranger and I'm a fighter. So for me to have to fucking wave the white flag, right? To surrender because I can't control myself was a really, really hard for me to accept that I was like powerless over this. Like this had control of me. I didn't have control of it where I feel like I am in control in many situations. And fast forward, and I could touch, we'll go back onto this stuff later, but fast forward, I went through the programs at the VA. I finally surrendered and I had a great experience there. I never used them. I never really thought of it as an option. I was like, I don't need that. You know what I mean? Like I'll figure it out. I'll get help. And eventually, I was basically down to my knees and I'm like, I gotta go. So once I went, they were extremely helpful. I mean, they helped me get back on my feet. I've used them for other types of counseling and stuff since then. And it's helped me. I needed it. That's good. And we fast forward now, I'm over 2 years sober from all drugs and alcohol. I just opened a gym. Nice. I'm getting ready to compete again. I feel healthy. My body's clean. My mind's clean. So, that's where I'm at right now. And
that's huge, man. I mean, you touched on so many key things that I talk with other veterans and family members about is that that feeling like you're waving a white flag. It's like,
Yeah.
I can't do
Like,
that.
I have to lay my weapon down and surrender. Screw that.
Yeah.
I'm not doing that.
Yeah. And it's good to hear the positive experience with a VA. I had a positive experience with a VA. And that's important, and props out to them for helping you out. And I think the other key thing is there's a lot of people trained to help with exactly what many of us veterans go through. So that's an excellent message. And again, another one, props to you, man. You fought your way through it. You were smart enough and strong enough to get help. And I mean, that's probably the toughest thing you probably ever did in your life, but I'm proud of you. You know what I mean? I mean, that is cool. I mean, really. And now, I'm dying to see both you guys fight. This is really cool what you guys, come through with your life, and ultimately what people don't understand is 19 and 21 years old, and you're standing thousands of miles away from home, loaded to the gill, and saying, hey, we're going to go fight. And about 3 or 4 years ago, you're sitting in a classroom, picking your nose, doing whatever you do in a classroom, you know what I mean? Not giving a shit about anything in the world. And then all of a sudden it's like you're knee deep in it. And people, until you do it, you can't fathom it. People don't understand it. I tell them, I just watched that movie, The Outpost. You see that yet?
I didn't see that one. I saw Restrepo, but I haven't seen The Outpost.
Yeah, The Outpost. You see that, Connor?
I think I did start to watch it. It's when they get ambushed by surrounded by they're in that valley, right?
Yeah, they shut it down, but basically they're at the bottom of 3 hills, the worst spot you could be. And it was crazy. But what was cool was when it was over, some of the actual soldiers that were in it played themselves in the movie. So the guy that directed wanted to keep it authentic. And I thought about that, and I was having a conversation with a guy who wasn't a veteran, doesn't know anything about it. And I said, when you watch that movie, you're really numb to what combat is like. Because you can watch it and say, oh, that was cool. The guy dove behind here, he shot here, did whatever. But when you're there, the violence and the sound and I don't have to tell you guys, but I mean, it just, people need to understand that. And it's really hard to do that. So kind of getting off on another subject, but I want to get over to Connor. And Connor, same thing, tell us about that, where you're at now, what you're doing. Talk a little bit about your transition out.
So I talked about my transition when I came home from Afghanistan and kind of how that went. I came home back, and first thing I did really, when we come back from deployment, you have like a month and a half off. So I went home and I did the same thing like everybody else is. They just party because you saved a whole bunch of money back from deployment, and the only thing you haven't drank or done anything for us for like 6 months. Want to do is come home and went on my cruise, party with my friends, and that's not all I was doing. You know what I mean? And I think my friends started to notice at that point when I came home, like as when you're drinking and stuff, I was getting just irrational, a little bit more emotional than I'm a pretty easy-going guy overall, I think. And I think they started seeing different sides of me where I was being a little bit more rash or being a little bit just and that was me not knowing how to deal with the stresses of deployment. And I don't think I was in scenarios where I would have the most severe cases of PTSD or anything, or but you're still with that feeling of constantly being a little bit off and a little bit under stress for 6 months. It's kind of hard to shake that when you come home. You know what I mean? And I think that's the thing people don't really talk. It's not always just the combat that people are that you relive. It's worrying about what's going to happen. It's being on edge for like living in these scenarios, in these cases where somebody could kind of just like walk in. There's guys walking around on bases in Afghanistan with guns from both sides. You don't know when they're going to switch parties and do have a green on blue situation, or you know what I mean. So there's a lot of things that people don't see that go on, and also just like from leadership, just like when you're deployed, man, it's serious. It's life or death. So it's not time to relax. Right. Chill out. And so that stress, accumulates over time. And, when you come home, it's not easy for everybody just to blend right back into society. And that's a problem where I see, and I, with guys who do this multiple times, like a lot of my friends, man, like you said, that kid was 24 and he had 2 Purple Hearts. By the time he's 24, what are you, 3 Purple Hearts or 2 Purple Hearts? And I mean, he probably never healed from his first deployment mentally or everything, and they want to ramp him up. And just like Sean's saying, like he laid down the flag of surrendering after he got out, because there's no point, because he knew he didn't have to fight again. It was just him dealing with his own. These guys know that they have to get out the door, and you're not going to raise any red flags by admitting to people that you're having sleep problems, you're having this kind of problem, because you want to be ready to go, to be out there and deploy and do your job. And as an operator, I mean, we always say the mission comes first. So we put personal comfort aside to accomplish the missions ahead of us. And that's just what we do. That's what's trained into us. And that's why we're so good. But, just like anything, it's yin and yang. It's good that we carry it, but there's a lot of suffering that we just dig down, that we bury. No, we don't dig out. We bury it and we just move on. Right. And until you kind of get out of the military, I don't see guys dealing with that. Or if they don't get out of the military, it's almost too late. And this is right, size and all this stuff that's going on. But I said, one of the best ways for anybody to deal with it for me has been jiu-jitsu, but it's also anything people really love to do. I think a lot of times people have hobbies and things they love to do. And as they get going with life or military careers or anything, they just kind of lose that, because life takes over. So it's important for people to come back and find things they really are passionate about. But for me, jiu-jitsu and martial arts was the perfect fit for all that. Anytime in my life when I was in high school, if I had trouble with a girl, I started getting punching holes in walls because I was getting mad about my girl. I'd go to martial arts, you know what I mean? And go back to jiu-jitsu and start training. And that anytime I've ever ran into life problems, I go back to using martial arts. And I think a little misconception, it's not that I'm going in there and I'm getting my anger out on a punching bag. It's I'm redirecting my focus into something that's more positive and learning and physical. By the time I leave a jiu-jitsu class, about hours meditating. I'm not thinking about anything besides trying to learn the maneuvers or whatever I'm trying, the technique or whatever I'm focusing, trying to learn that, using physical energy, trying to figure that whole thing out. By the time I get out of there, I don't have enough energy to even stress about other things. You know what I mean? And I just dealt with that in a positive way instead of a negative way. I think people think that we do martial arts because we're crazy and we want to look and just kill people, because that's how you can't kill people in combat. We're gonna kill people in the cage, and that's the exact opposite. It's a more of a community, I find, of people building each other up and being more positive and helping each other out selflessly, not for personal reasons, but helping other people out to get better. And it's just a really, really positive community. And just jiu-jitsu is obviously, but martial arts in general, I really find that.
That's cool.
Yeah, and I just want to backpack on what Connor's saying real quick. I mean, I found a lot of similarities, everything that he's talking about. I mean, going back to not only the extreme symptoms of PTSD, but just kind of that ongoing hypervigilance of I got to be on. And if I'm not on, then I'm off. You know what I mean? And regular, my family members and stuff, why are you so intense? Why are you acting so intense? You know what I mean? Getting mad at my fiance for not giving me a 200-meter, warning on taking a turn or something, little things like that. And it's martial arts for me. It's not just about the aggression, but it's about taking all this energy that we have built up inside of us and that intensity and that fire that is inside of us. That's probably part of our natural personalities anyway, but that was heightened by what we did in the military, taking that and channeling it into something positive. And then, I mean, the camaraderie of a team, it related so much of all right, so cool. I'm going to pack up my gear bag. All right, I got my shin pads. I got my boxing gloves. I got my mouth guard. I got my wrist straps. I like it all organized. I do my little checklist. Everything's folded up. I'm ready to go. So then I get to practice, and I see other men and women there for the same purpose. We're on the same mission, and we're all elite performers, just like in the military. We're there to drill, to get better at our skill and our craft, just like you would in the military. And then it's that perfect amount of stress in a way, right? But any physical exercise or jiu-jitsu or competitiveness is putting you under some sort of stress, but we're choosing when to be put under the stress. And we're learning from, working through those stressful situations where someone might almost catch me in an arm bar and then I get out of it. It's a controlled environment where I'm learning to handle myself and my emotions under a stressful situation that directly translates to other areas of my life. So then I don't lose my shit walking into Market Basket. I'm like, all right, cool. I'm a little bit more relaxed now. I let my energy out in a positive place, and I left the shit on the mats.
That's cool. I want to reflect here. I want to make sure I get her name and title. Professor Allison Willing, who's down at the University of South Florida in the neurology and brain repair. Have you guys ever heard of her?
I have not.
She did a study with veterans in jiu-jitsu. And let me just read a couple of things I highlight here. And it's really interesting because something you both said, she called it out in her research. And a couple of things I highlighted here. They talked about these are veterans with PTSD, 50 of them, for 5 months, they put them in a program and then they monitor them. And she put on there, another potential explanation with jiu-jitsu can be viewed as a problem-solving opportunity for the practitioner that may instill a resilience that translates to life outside the gym. That's exactly what you said, Sean. I went on to read about it's jiu-jitsu takes as much brain power. You know what I mean? Like exactly like you said, you're in a hold. How am I going to get out of this? You start to analyze it. You start to figure it out. She goes on to say that the perception of being capable of contribution to a resolution of a traumatic event may lead to fewer symptoms of PTSD. So, and then she just talked about that. She said that the veterans in the study are clinically significant improvements in their symptoms of PTSD after they went through this program. So, in fact, I'm going to post it when I put the podcast out. I'll post the link to the article, and it goes on to talk about it. So it's not real long, and she wrote a book on it. In fact, we're going to have her on a podcast. Well, we hope to have her on a podcast we've talked to her about in the summer and talk a little bit more about jiu-jitsu. And we want to kind of get a bigger forum together. So I'll reach out to you guys again when we do that and get some clinical people in here that have actually done studies on this. But, that was really interesting. And, to hear your perspective and see that the research is backing that up. This is a valuable type of whatever you want to call it, therapy, a way to deal. You both mentioned it. When you got out of the military, that was the one thing you knew you had to go back to. I can go back to this place, if you want to call it that. And Connor, what do you got any comments about that? Like the research, the way you use that?
I totally agree. I mean, it's funny because martial arts my whole life has been explained other parts of my life in a way, you know what I mean? Like learning techniques, learning the basics before you learn how to do advanced things. And that's carried into the military. But like, it's just, I definitely see how it's like focusing on it's like there's something you're really working hard on in the gym. Like say I want to work on I keep getting caught in a move. All right. And everything I do, I just always keep getting caught in that move. So I have to figure that out, to focus step by step, all the little tiny things I need to do to get myself out. It takes my full attention. All right. To figure that out. Never mind me not thinking about all the other stupid stuff in my life that, you know what I mean, I'm trying to deal with. It's teaching me that you can figure your way out of these solutions and these problems. I think people get trapped up in an aspect of life where they just think they're so buried and there's no way they can deal with these problems. But I learned through jiu-jitsu, you know what I mean? There's things like you think that there's no way I'm going to beat that, but you work hard enough at it and you try and then you eventually figure your way out how to get out of these moves. And you figure that's how you grow. And you can and it keeps happening over and over. Like it's crazy how many levels there are to the sport of jiu-jitsu. Like you start off, and you're a white belt and going to class, and it's like, wow, you realize there's like an ego thing you hit where you realize that I am just like a little child. I thought I was, especially military guys, anybody, you walk in, you're like, you think that you're like a tough guy, and then you're getting tapped up by girls, you're getting tapped to it by like guys that are 30 pounds lighter than you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, what the hell is this? You know what I mean? It blows your mind. But then, you know, step by step, you start realizing little things, and you realize, I mean, I give somebody who's just started jiu-jitsu, I mean, I give them 2 months of training, and I bet you they'll do against most people when they walk up to on the street. Like, you know, 90%, I would say, honestly. You give a person 6 months to a year, they're like almost a human weapon at that point. It's crazy. And that's just because there's no way. You can't fake jiu-jitsu. All right. In other martial arts, you could kind of like say you learn the moves and you know what I mean? But there's no like application to it. So there's no way to prove it. Jiu-jitsu, you have to go through all the failures and shortcomings and getting tapped and all this stuff before you actually earn your blue belt, or, you know, just get better at the martial art in general. And there's no faking it. So that's something I think, compared to other martial arts and other things, you have to go through all the abuse to be able to obtain, to get to a level to succeed. So if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, let me ask you this, like, how much time outside the gym do you know, if you're sitting somewhere, you know, you're grabbing a coffee, waiting to meet somebody or whatever, does your mind go back to jiu-jitsu and you start thinking through that a lot? I mean, does it?
Always. For right now, I mean, I might be a little bit obsessed with it at this point in my life, but like for me, like I'm always like, if I'm going to bed at night, that's how I calm my brain down, is I think about a move I learned during that day and it's going step by step through my brain. How do I do that move, or whatever technique it is? And that's something I definitely do all the time. If I want to relax, it's kind of weird. It's like my happy space. It's like, oh, how do I do that? And you can think about everything in jiu-jitsu, except what you're missing. Visualization, you know, that's huge. I use that for my fighting. I don't know if Sean uses that for my cage fighting. Like when I have a fight coming up, you'd be surprised how much energy I spend just visualizing stuff. And it seems to me it works the best. So
Yeah, Sean, same thing for you. You think about it all a lot, or?
Yeah, especially right now, you know, I haven't fought in 2 years. I took some time to open my gym. But with that being said, I was training regularly, and yeah, I'm always thinking about it too. I mean, I'm closed my eyes. I remember I was going to take a nap the other day, and I twitched because I was visualizing slipping somebody's punch, you know, like, but like Connor said, it's actually a little bit of a grounding technique, right? Where it sounds like the way he's using it is at night to help him relax. He's running through different movements that we probably practiced in practice earlier that day or earlier that week. And I'm very much like that too. I mean, with the visualization, big time. I mean, it sounds kind of weird, but I've won fights, and right after, like, I was like, I knew that was going to happen. Like, I knew that was going to happen. I knew how it was going to happen, and it happened. Like, you know, and when I'm really approaching a fight, every night I'm visualizing victory, and after every practice, I'm closing my eyes and I'm raising my hands and I'm imagining the referee holding my hand up and what those feelings feel like to be victorious. And I think it's a huge part of this. If you can tap into that visualization, I believe most people at the top are really tuned into that, whether they speak about it or not, they're doing it.
I totally 100%. And that's why I think it sounds silly. That's why it's important for me, like whatever my walkout song is. So that's where I know, this is when like my visualizations I've been planning in my head is like, all right, I'm walking out. This is the song. This is what I'm going to see in my head as I get to the cage. This guy's going to be rubbing the Vaseline on my face. I'm going to see my corner guys. I actually visualize myself walking into the cage, the door. Like, so like when I watch, is like Sean says, when I watch the video of like what I do, it's like, I've already seen all this before in my head so many times, up to the point where the ref says, go touch the gloves. You know what I mean? I visualize all that stuff. And it's a huge tool to use. And I heard about other golfers use it a lot now. I heard like it's a big thing, and I don't know, probably a lot more studies to come along with that about just, you know, enhancing performance, but and I'm sure it could help, like you said, meditatively. It's just focusing on other things, you know what I mean, more positive things, and that will get out of these dark situations.
I tell you, and that's, you know, I see a lot of that, like, you know, setting a goal, achieving that goal. You know, I look back as a veteran, we have a mission. There's objectives in that mission, and we want to succeed at that. And I see that with a lot. You're exactly right with athletes in every variety of sport. The mental aspect is I can't imagine, like in an MMA world, the mental aspect, it could make or break you. You know what I mean? I mean, there's a
Yeah.
I watch it, and it's like every dude who walks into the octagon, they're mean, they're ripped. It's like, okay, what's going to be the differentiator here? That's what I always look at. What it is. They all got their special moves or holds, but I can imagine that mental side of it's got to be used. And I think that's good. Back to what we're talking about, keeping your brain busy. You know what I mean? Keeping your brain busy with positive. I think you both said it. What I love about this, and other veterans that listen to this, surround yourself with positive people that have a common, and it can be other veterans, but and the more I get around jiu-jitsu, the more veterans I find. You guys heard of the We Defy Foundation?
No.
I've heard of that.
Yeah, I'll send you some. So I got a conversation with these guys. Guy was he was an F-16 pilot, but they started it with jiu-jitsu, and they actually have a program where if a veteran's like 80% disabled, they have like grants that can get them into a year scholarship into jiu-jitsu. So what we're trying to work together with them, and this is something Connor and we were talking about this, working together, and Sean, we'd love to have you work with us about ways we can communicate and get this out to more veterans. And that's what they want to do, where if we have veterans that are out there and maybe they're down and out, maybe they ain't got the money for this or whatever, we get them a scholarship, get them in there, and and then they have mentors in that program that follow up with them, to make sure. So it's a pretty cool deal. We're just started talking to them, and we're doing more research. So OVN, we want to expand into that. That's why I'd like to even get up there to Boston and visit the gym. And really just kind of walk me through what it's all about. And I want to meet some of the instructors. And, I read about, your guy there. What's the name of the gym, Connor?
Joe Lozon. So Sean,
yeah,
with us too. He comes down and me and him get some drilling and training together. But Joe Lozon owns the gym. He's a UFC veteran. He is, he's fought everybody. He's been in the sport since he was like 19 or 20. Yeah. He's a really good guy. He's a really good leader. A lot of times you see gyms I think they lack leadership in a lot of ways. And for Joe, a guy who's actually never been in the military but supports the military, he's actually been overseas twice to go support the troops and do like seminars and stuff like that. So he's big into that. But as I was saying, like a guy who hasn't been in the military, but he's a really good leader for New England, for my gym, and just for MMA in general in New England. I think he's helped out a lot. So he's a good dude.
That's cool. So Sean, you train there or you train at your own gym?
A little bit of both. So lately I've been going down to Lozon's quite a bit, working with Connor, working with those guys, especially now that I'm planning on getting back and competing again. So I've been there, but the last couple of years I've jumped around a little bit. My next fight, I'll definitely be partly representing Lozon's as well as my own gym, Self-Combat.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about Self-Combat. What's it about?
So Self-Combat, I opened it in December. It's body, mind, spirit. We're a physical first gym, so we focus on physical fitness, but I do discuss things, about how you can strengthen your mind and your spirit. If people want to get into that, I try to give them the, point them in the direction to touch upon those things. But we do boxing, kickboxing, MMA fitness. We do strength and conditioning. And we have a little bit of a team practice going on there as well. So, I'm just getting into the business world and kind of just getting the wheels turning, but so far so good. I got a good clientele there and base of members and a couple of good guys working for me. So we're in a position for success. And that's something I've wanted to do is, you mentioned a little bit earlier is find a way to get veterans in there, and if they can't afford it, if they're down and out and they're in a program, is there a way we can get the VA to shuttle these guys over for, a training session a week or something like that? Because it is so important to me. And, Connor and I have talked about MMA a decent amount today, but jiu-jitsu is a great way to get involved with it without putting yourself in immediate danger, right? Because MMA is dangerous, so
right.
MMA is a rough sport and it's not for everybody. So jiu-jitsu is one of those things that, you can do up until you're 80 years old. I mean, there's definitely a place for everybody on the mats, and it's one of those unique things where it's physically challenging, yes, but it's mentally challenging. And
Right.
I think that's what's really drawing a lot of people to it, and that's why it's becoming more and more useful and with veterans and PTSD and things like
That's
that.
a good point. We talked about MMA. We want to do that because, for everybody watching, we want these two guys. We want you to follow them on their Instagram, follow them on Facebook, but mainly I think Instagram is where you guys have a pretty strong presence. Follow their careers, fellow veterans. We need to support our own. That's what OVN does. That we go out, work with athletes and different things like that to help support them to try to get their careers going, but also help us get the message out like we're doing now. So, but that's a real important piece here, the jiu-jitsu piece of this. Like I said, of all the reading I've been doing, what you guys are saying, this is a really, really valuable thing for veterans to get into. And as you mentioned, Vietnam era veterans, how many Vietnam era veterans I talked to that they didn't even use the 4 letters of PTSD or whatever. It's called just like shell shock. They dive under a table when they hear a gunshot or whatever. And these guys, they had no outlet, so they smoked, they drank drugs, that, and then some of them didn't make it. Some of them are still homeless in all kinds of situations. So, the message to them is, hey, if you're 65, head over to a gym. You know what I mean? And that's great to even connect with some young veterans. And of all the jiu-jitsu gyms and everything that I've talked to, all of them have been wide open to say, hey, we support what you're doing. We want to get people in here. So, so what's the best way to get, if there's some guys in the Boston area and they want to get over to your gym, what's the best way? Go to the website or social media or what?
Yeah, so for my gym, it would be, you'd want to go to selfcombat.com, or you could check me out on Instagram, theunpredictable.1. I would love to talk to veterans. I've had other people reach out to me before, so I'm always open to whether it's my place or somewhere in your area. I'd love to help point you in the direction. I've trained at all different places all over New England. So
cool. What about your gym, Connor? What's the best way?
All right, so I work at Lausanne MMA. I actually teach kickboxing there mostly, but I mean I'm there every day for the jiu-jitsu class as well. And so yeah, you guys can always get me at The Controller MMA on my Instagram, and I'll lead you guys into the right direction for other gyms. If you guys are looking for, we have Gi Jiu-Jitsu at Lausanne. So if you guys are looking for other gyms, at Danny Sabry's is a gym we're affiliated close with. And there's a lot of good gyms everywhere. I mean, I'm just, for anybody who's like watching this, if you're in a different area, just go to your local jiu-jitsu gym. And that's the biggest thing for me. I want to see more veterans doing jiu-jitsu. Just give it a try. You know what I mean? You're going to get it's going to be humbling your first day probably, but I mean, once you stick with it, you'll learn a lot about yourself, and it's a really good, positive thing to get into.
Cool. So, I'll tell you what, man, I could, guys, I really appreciate you coming on. We're getting near our hour. I don't know, you guys are busy, but there's a lot more I'd like to talk about. Like I said, we're going to try to do a session in the summer. And hopefully what we can talk about in the summer is some of the veterans that we connected with you guys. Let's get some veterans connected to this. One of the things we like to do, or, with OVN is hit the road with it. Don't just talk about it. That's why COVID killed us. We like to get out to events and connect with veterans. The digital stuff is great. The reach is great. But you know what? I'll tell you a brief story about OVN, how it was created. We did some research about the way to reach veterans and help veterans. We had a young guy, one of our board members, really close to, he was a medic. He was E6, and on Christmas Eve in 2015, he took his own life. Nobody saw it coming. And that started a conversation with a bunch of us. And that's what really led to OVN, a lot of it, some other things. But so we said, let's do some research. So we asked veterans, tons of veterans by surveys and so on, how do you get help? Where would you go? What would you do? Like Sean Ed, he went to the VA. The number one thing they said there was the worst thing they ever did was they Googled for help. They said it was confusing. They were asked for money, and they ended up just going the other direction. So that's what caused OVN to really say, hey, let's go out, let's do live outreach. There's a lot of good organizations. Jiu-Jitsu is something now we want to add into our portfolio. And we go to outreach to say, hey, look, we'll help you find a gym. We got some great veterans who use the program. You guys are ones we'll refer back to. We hope you don't mind if we drop you an email or something and say, hey, here's a guy I'd like to talk about it. Connect with them, however, whatever's easier. That's the goal, to help our veterans out. So any last things? I tell you what, one thing too, I wanted to touch on one thing. I asked you guys a question beforehand. So the final question, I'll go to both of you. I asked you, I said, if you had the attention of all the veterans who served and suffer from these invisible injuries and different things like that, from transitioning out to combat whatsoever, what would be in a couple sentences your message to them? Connor, go ahead. You go first.
I would say don't use a permanent solution to a temporary problem. Meaning, don't make a decision that's gonna, you can't come back from when there's a problem that's temporary. We have tools, all sorts of tools out there, just be it's okay to put, like Sean said, raise the white flag and just go out there and reach for help. I mean, it's definitely it's a good thing. You know what I mean? It's okay. Everybody runs through these problems. So definitely, reach out there, use the resources you have, use the VA, use OVN, talk to other veterans like Sean and myself. We're willing to help anybody, so that's the main thing I'd like to say.
Cool. John?
Yeah, I kind of what Connor said, but just keep one foot in front of the other, and that there's always a light at the end. And even when things feel extremely hopeless, if you reach out to people, you will get the help that you need. And just don't give up on that hope.
Right. Excellent. I tell you what, that's key, and I can tell almost every veteran that I ever know, when you think there's nobody there, nobody cares, you can almost guarantee you can reach out to another veteran and
Yep.
They'll relate. They'll connect.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
It's just that easy, a lot of times. So the last thing we always like to leave with, and then, when we launch the podcast, it'll be on there, but to the VA, the heart of this, veteran suicide prevention, the crisis care. The one thing we always want to tell everybody in this message, there's an 800 number there. You hit option 1. The key thing is what we want to really communicate to everybody is the crisis line isn't to call when you're the veteran and you need that immediate help, although it's there for that. But it's okay if a family member just has a question or a concern about a veteran. Hey, John, just something's not right. You know what I mean? He's late all the time. He was never like that. There's some difference they're noticing. Pick up the phone, call those operators at the crisis care center. They're trained. They've had the experience in this. They can answer your questions. So they want everybody to know that this is not, the 911 type thing. It can be, but it's literally just dial them up, ask them questions, just say I have a concern, or I want to know how the program works. If I ever needed to use it, what do I do? So that's important for everybody to know. So, all right. Any final words, guys, before we call it off here for the night?
Yeah. Thank you, Tony, for having us on. I really appreciate it. I'm glad to be a part of something like this. You know what I mean? It really gives me a little bit more motivation in my personal fighting career. You know what I mean? That if I can get something like OVN behind me, I'd love to represent and bring it to the highest level, and we can hopefully bring more positivity and spread the word to people.
Yeah.
And getting people into jiu-jitsu. So thank you.
Cool. Any last words, Sean?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Look forward to hopefully getting an email from you at some point, and let's just continue taking action like you guys are over at OVN.
Cool. And the last thing, don't forget, these guys are going to be having a fight real soon. We're looking like May. Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, I think so. You may. It's nobody's really coming out with the definite dates or time or locations yet, but I know there's people out there trying to get fights happening. Me and Sean we're training. We're getting ready to go. We've been drilling every week together, so we'll be ready to go when it's time for sure.
Oh, there's a good chance we'll be fighting on the same card too, so we're gonna blow the roof off that place.
I'll be there.
Joint operation.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Thanks again, guys. And
thank you.
We'll connect with you in a little bit.
All right. Awesome.